Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of Dave's Story Time. Hope you're enjoying some of these stories. I'm enjoying telling them. And if you would like to be a part of the story time journey, you too can tell your story. Just go ahead and shoot me a message on Instagram. You can find me at And Another Thing with Dave on Instagram. All right, let's get into this week's story. This story is about an adventure gone wrong. Yes, another one. It's about a hiking trip that I decided to take with a roommate at the time in the Mendocino National Forest. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? All right, so my roommate's name was Travis, and I asked Travis if he had ever gone camping in the Mendocino National Forest. This is about 4 hours north of San Francisco. Massive wilderness area, dirt roads only, no infrastructure, no support, no rangers, no nothing. You're on your own. So he said he had never been camping in Mendocino Forest, and it's one of my favorite places to camp, particularly the middle fork of the Eel River is a fantastic spot. A lot of the fire roads wind along the Eel River. Some go up into the mountains from there, but you have access to the wonderful Eel River, which is really cool, cold flowing water. Great swimming holes, rocks you can jump and dive off of. And it's called the Eel River because there's these 2-foot eels that live in it. And I never knew this until I took a swimming mask there one time to go for a swim. Diving mask. And as soon as you go under the water, you see these eels, and they rut out little, they make little nests on the bottom of the river, about 2 feet in diameter. And then the eels themselves are about 2 feet long. They look like snakes. And, yeah, so if you're going to go swimming there, I would advise don't bring a mask because it's much more enjoyable if you don't see all these eels in the river. But apparently the Native American legend has it that they called it Eel River because there used to be so many eels that you could walk across it. And there are still quite a few. When you poke your head under the water, you look in both directions, you probably see 5 to 10 of them. But, they stay to themselves. They want nothing to do with us, really. Anyway, I digress. So we pack up our stuff, get ready for this trip. My friend Travis had just bought a new backpack, so he's like, I think I'm going to try out my new pack. I'm going to throw some extra stuff in there, just for weight, just so I can check out, give my new pack a real trial. See how it holds up, break it in. And that factoid will come into play later in the story. So, we stop at the store, fill up the ice chest with food, snacks, ice, bunch of beer, of course. I was drinking at the time. Anyway, wonderful. As soon as you're an hour outside of San Francisco, it starts getting pretty rural. And, once you're 2 hours outside of San Francisco, it's very rural. Beautiful drive up Highway 101 North. Once you get to the Highway 128 turnoff, that's near the Round Valley Indian Reservation, then it gets really rural. You come up to the Mendocino National Forest. There's a number of places you can get into the forest. Like I said before, my favorite area is the middle fork of the Eel River. This is BLM land, Bureau of Land Management owned land. So public open space, non-improved wild lands. You can still see remnants of the logging 50 years ago. Big cables every once in a while. You'll stumble upon one. But it's a very gorgeous, very, rugged area. And it's a great place to camp. So we're driving out there, take a left just past there's a ranger station right at the entrance to the forest. So we take a left at the ranger station, start heading up the dirt road up the mountain. And one of my favorite methods is to just go as far as my vehicle will take me. I've never had I've had one four-wheel drive vehicle, but in this instance we were not in a four-wheel drive. So my MO has always been, in a two-wheel drive vehicle, drive as far as you can before you feel like you're going to get stuck, and that's camp. Like I said, this is super rural, super rugged, so never have I ever seen another person when I've been camping there. You don't even see another car, right? You are on your own, 50 miles from the nearest person, at least. 25 miles as the crow flies from the nearest person or the nearest house, out in the middle of nowhere, right? And that's the beauty of this area. So, we find our spot, the end of a little cul-de-sac. There's all these cul-de-sacs left over from logging, right? So what they would do is they'd cut a road into the forest and make a cul-de-sac at the end so that they could turn their vehicles around to get back out. All right, so there's a lot of roads that don't really go anywhere. They just go to a dead end, which enabled them to access different parts of the forest. Some roads go all the way through. Some are just these dead-end cul-de-sac looking things. So we found one of these dead-end cul-de-sacs. We're like, all right, this is camp. This is home for the next 3 days. Unloaded our stuff, set up our tents, pull out our lounge chairs, looking right across the Eel River. We're probably I'm going to say 2,000 feet up, maybe 1,000 feet up, about 1,000 feet up from the Eel River. All right, so we're looking out across the Eel River. Can't really see the river itself, but you can see the ravine. And then looking across to Spy Rock Ridge, which is Spy Rock Road is an infamous marijuana growing area in Mendocino. If you've ever heard about the movie Murder Mountain about Mendocino, well, Spy Rock Road is the real Murder Mountain. Humboldt County has nothing on Mendocino. Mendocino is much rougher, much more rural, and many more roads that go out into the middle of nowhere. And Spy Rock Road is one of these notorious roads. It's been, there's nothing out there except for marijuana farms, and it's been that way since the 70s. Anyway, we're looking across to Spy Rock Ridge, and, we crack a beer, sit in our lounge chairs for a minute, talk about how beautiful it is. We're looking across, kind of gauging how far up the ridge across the way, how far up it our camp is. And we're like, oh man, we're about halfway up that ridge. Wow, okay. That ridge is 2,000 feet. We must be 1,000 feet. Crack a beer, enjoy our beer, decide to go for a hike. We hike up to the top of the ridge behind us. And it took us probably 2 hours to get up there. Travis brought his pack because he wanted to try out his new pack, see how comfortable it was. So he loaded, like I said, he loaded a bunch of crap in there that he didn't need for this trip because we're only going to be gone 3 days and we had all the supplies we need. But you never know what you're going to need when you're in the wilderness, right? So always better to be over-prepared. Always better to have more than you need. And luckily, Travis took that to heart when he packed his pack. So he threw a bunch of stuff in there. Extra clothes, a water filtration system, an emergency blanket, a candle, some other things. And then we proceed. Sorry about that. There's a little forklift going by there. And we proceed up this mountain. So we get to the top of the mountain. There's a beautiful view, pretty much a panoramic 360-degree view. We're sitting on top of the world. You can see the coastal fog hugging the coastal mountain range in the far distance to the west. Just absolutely gorgeous, right? So we hang out up there, imbibe a little more. Then we decide, okay, well, let's head back to camp. Right around sundown, just before sundown, an hour before sundown. Well, let's head down to camp. I had this bright idea to take a different way back to camp and explore a different route than the route we had taken up. Don't ever do that. Always take the same route. Always take the same route out that you took in. I made this near fatal mistake and we got lost. We're going down through this ravine. Well, the way the hill, the geography of the hill was that it had a bunch of these really tight, deep ravines where you could be on one side of a ravine and you wouldn't even see the next one over. So I assumed that we were on the ravine that led right down to our camp. But we were 2 ravines over. So we ended up going down past our camp. All of a sudden, we get down way too close to the Eel River going, what's going on? Wait a minute. We should have hit camp by now. And then the reality sets in that we passed our camp. So I'm thinking, okay, well, we just went right by it. So let's just go, let's just go up a little bit. We'll go to the left a little bit, to the right a little bit going up. And we probably just went by it, didn't see it because of the thickness of the woods. So we do that. We end up getting way too high up the ridge to the point where like, wow, okay, we're way too high on the mountain. We've gone past it again. So we did this about 4 times, right? And this is a steep vertical incline. I don't know, 20% grade. So it's mountain climbing, right? Because there are no trails at this point. We're bushwhacking up and down the mountain. Sun's going down, starting to get cold. Luckily, cool, not cold, luckily. And, I'm trying to stay confident, stay positive, not letting Travis know that I'm freaking out on the inside. He thinks I know the mountain like the back of my hand, which I kind of do, but not, if you can't see anything, you can't see anything. So we end up, it starts getting dark. We end up, okay, well, let's take one of these fire roads because we know we're on a road. So let's take a fire road and that, one of these roads will lead us to our car. So we try that on 3 or 4 different fire roads, right? And it's just disheartening, right? Like all of them are ones that come to these dead-end cul-de-sacs for logging, and none of them are the right one where my truck is parked. So at this point, it's getting dark. We had the idea that we might try to walk out the road back to the ranger station all the way out of the forest, which would be about a 20-mile walk. 25-mile walk. We're walking down the fire road and it's so dark we start tripping over stuff and we're like, you know what, we're gonna get hurt. This is not smart. We should just hunker down for the night. We should sleep on the trail. There's bear and stuff there, mountain lions, coyotes. So we're like, okay, well, we should sleep on the trail. We don't really want to sleep in the bush under a tree because you never know, like skunks, raccoons, coyotes, mountain lion, bear. So, thank God Travis had this emergency blanket that he bought, that he brought with us. Thank God he had 2 extra layers of clothes. So he had a whole extra layer for himself, and he had a sweater for me. We're wearing shorts because we took off in the middle of the day when it was, nice and hot out. Now it's probably getting down to, high 50s at night. And he's got his sleeping bag, which he also tied onto his pack. And then he gave me the emergency blanket. He had a candle with him, so we lit that little candle. And, we're huddling around the candle, getting the artificial, getting the illusion of warmth from it, putting our hands real close to it, like, okay. And then we're like, all right, let's go to sleep, and we'll find the car in the morning. So we go to sleep. The wind picks up in the middle of the night, and the emergency blanket I've got starts flapping around, wakes me up, it's flapping around. So I'm like, okay, tuck it underneath one side of me or whatever, the side the wind was coming from. And those things are pretty good, right? Those tiny little tinfoil thick emergency blankets, they do help a lot, but it's not like having a sleeping bag. So I kept waking up cold because, it had come untucked and the wind was getting under there. Then somehow it gets a little tear in it, maybe when I was rolling over in the middle of the night or something. So it gets this little tear in it, and the little tear is getting caught in the wind, and it's flap, 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 making this noise, right? So you know how your brain does when you're sleeping, how your brain will make up something in a dream to coincide with what's happening in reality. So my brain, I'm having this super vivid dream that a bear comes up and is licking my face. So I wake up, just freaked out. Turns out that it was just that flap, 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 flap of the tear in the emergency blanket that probably made my brain think that there was a bear. It probably turned the flap of the blanket into the lapping sound of the bear. But anyway, needless to say, I woke up in a panic. It's, 3:34 in the morning. It's freezing. It had probably gotten down to 50 degrees. And so I do my best to tuck that blanket around me on all sides. The emergency blanket, it's no thicker than it's about as thick as wrapping paper, right? Not even as thick as tinfoil. So I do that, not the best night's sleep ever, needless to say. So we wake up at the butt crack of dawn, because no point in sleeping in when you're completely lost in the wilderness. And we didn't even really bring food with us. Luckily, Travis brought a couple Cliff Bars, right? So we each had a Cliff Bar. But other than that, we didn't have any food. We had a little bit of water. We each brought 1 bottle of water with us because we were just going for a little day hike. So we each have about a half a bottle of water left. And totally kind of, our hopes are pretty much completely dashed from the night before, not being able to find anything. Felt like we were getting more and more lost the more we were looking, right? So we do the same thing and try different fire roads, thinking, well, one of these fire roads has to be the one that we came in on. Has to be, right? There's, one of them is. So we try about another 4 fire roads. None of them lead to, to our camp where my truck is parked, where our tents are set up that we had never slept in, where our ice chest full of food and beer is waiting for us, where our comfortable lounge chairs are. So after maybe the 4th attempt at finding a fire road, the correct fire road, I get this idea. I'm like, I remember looking across the ridge, and it seemed like we were about halfway up Spy Rock Ridge. You know, the elevation of our camp was we were directly looking across to about the halfway mark on Spy Rock Ridge. That's the only bearing that we had to go on. And we'd only sat there and looked across for one beer, so 10 minutes. So at this point, we start bushwhacking. Just, you know, we're not even worried about the fire roads anymore because we're thinking, well, those might all be leading us in the wrong direction. So then I came up with the idea to just go straight up the mountain and then see which fire roads we hit that way, and and explore those. So we do that 3 times, and to no avail. So we're going up. We do that to no avail. We get to a point that's too high on the mountain. So then we shift over a little bit. We go down. Don't see any fire roads. Then we shift over a little bit and go back up. And at this point, Travis is like tall, skinny dude with a really fast metabolism. I don't have that problem. I probably could have survived on my blubber for a fair amount of time. But anyway, he's burning through his calories. He is exhausted. He has burnt through his calories. He's completely exhausted. At this point, we're both down to about an inch of water in our water bottles. And Travis looks to me and he says, dude, I can't go any further. I'm gonna just sit down here by this tree. And I said to him, dude, if you sit there, you might die there. I might never be able to find you again. You got to come with me. So he's lagging, way behind, right? 50 feet behind me at this point. And urgency is starting to kick in because we're almost out of water, right? And it's hot in the Mendocino National Forest. It gets up to mid-80s on the regular, 90s sometime. So luckily it was only mid-80s when we were there. It was summertime, so it didn't get any cooler than 50 at night. So we were very fortunate as far as that goes. But, so we're going straight. We're not hitting fire roads, and I just had this gut feeling. I'm like, man, it's off at about 2 o'clock off at about 11 o'clock to the left. I just feel it in my gut. And I'm looking back at the ridge across the way, Spy Rock Ridge. Oh, and a little interesting interjection is that, so as the crow flies, the peak of Spy Rock Ridge was only 5 miles away. But it's down this steep ravine that we were at, and then up Spy Rock Ridge is pretty much a, unhikeable cliff on the other side that we were looking at. But I know a family relative lived on Spy Rock Road, and they owned the very peak of Spy Rock Ridge. So I'm looking at the back side of Michael's property, and I'm like, man, if we had a flare gun, not that he would know what it is, but if we had a flare gun, I could definitely shoot it so they would see it from their house. Once again, they wouldn't know what it is. Who knows if they would send help? But it was just very ironic that we were thinking we might perish in the forest 10, 15 miles away from, extended family's house, a member of my extended family's house. So anyway, I get this gut feeling. The truck is off to the left at about 11 o'clock. I just know it. It's up the hill and to the left. I'm looking back at the ridge. I'm like, yep, that corresponds with the height of where we should be according to the view looking at the ridge across the ravine. Once again, we'd only had maybe a 5 to 10 minute view of that ridge when we first arrived at camp before we went hiking. So Travis reaches a point where he can't go another step. And I'm like, dude, okay, you stay right here. Here's my water. You know, I had an inch left of water. He had drank his. I'm like, here's my water. You know, if I have to, I'll drink my urine. I'll be back, bro. I'll be back. Stay right here, you know. So about another half hour, I found the truck. And I screamed with joy. And Travis is like, don't fuck with me, man. You know, so I hike down to about halfway to where he was, and I'm like, dude, I found it. I'm yelling to him, right, from the distance. And he's like, don't fuck with me, man. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, no, bro, I found it. I fucking found the truck. So, needless to say, we were ecstatic, happy ending. It could have gone so much worse. We could have died right there in the forest to not have been found for who knows how long, right? Would have been at least months, possibly years. Like I said, I've never seen another car, let alone person, anytime I've gone there, and I've gone camping there at least 10 times. Never even pass a car on the way in or the way out. It's that remote. So we make it back to our camp. We both crack a water, and then shortly after that, an ice cold beer, and then we both go pass out in our tents. And so, you know, this was meant to be, you know, a 2-day trip. So we each took, I don't know, 4-hour nap or something. Got up, had another beer, had a snack, and then hit the road on the way home. So it was the least relaxing camping trip I have ever had. And at one point, honestly feared for my life. It was not looking so good. But it all worked out. Cool minds prevailed. And thank God we made it out of there alive. Anyway, that's it for this edition of Dave's Story Time. If you want to join me and tell your story, hit me up with a direct message on Instagram. You can find me at And Another Thing with Dave on Instagram. I also have another podcast called And Another Thing with Dave on all podcast platforms, where I take a deep dive into unreported news stories or politics that you won't hear the lamestream media talking about. Much love, people. Talk to you next time.